Jenna, do you think in the mainstream media it's just stunning the lack of awareness of how the American electoral system has always been susceptible to these rorts? You know, I'm a big fan of the great big books on American history. Lyndon Johnson rorting Coke Stevenson out of the Texan Senate spot in 1948 by 87 votes, thereafter known always as landslide Lyndon. And I suppose the biggest one in 1960, when the Kennedy machine rorted Richard Nixon out of the Illinois Electoral College votes, and also Johnson was at play in Texas. It was said on the night of the 1960 election that Kennedy rang Mayor Richard Daley in Chicago and said, how are you going? How are we going there in the election? And Mayor Daley responded, well, Jack, I got to tell you that with all the friends you got here in Chicago, there's no way you can lose Illinois. And what he was referring to was that everyone in the cemetery voted for Kennedy ahead of Nixon. And Nixon was tempted to run a recount and legal challenge, and probably convinced by outgoing President Eisenhower he didn't do that for the sake of national unity. But can I say how good it is that President Trump is not tapping the mat and he's standing up to a system that's long been susceptible? What can we do about the American system and raise awareness of how this has been going on for a century or more?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that, and also for acknowledging that President Trump is doing the right thing to make sure that we are preserving election integrity, and also calling awareness to what has been going on for much longer. And of course, the mainstream media has an attention span of, maybe 5 minutes, and they're wanting to completely discount history. They're wanting to completely discount law. They want to pretend that this is so unprecedented, and it's just that President Trump refuses to concede, and he just doesn't want to leave after he has been defeated. That is not the fact. That is not the truth, and that's certainly not anything that the law and the facts show. And so these legal challenges aren't unprecedented. I mean, just back in 2000, I'm old enough to remember when there was a contest in Florida over about 3 counties and districts, and that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And it's not that the Supreme Court substituted its judgment for the will of the American people. It's that it fairly and appropriately applied the law and the Constitution to get to the outcome. And ultimately, even though the mainstream media had projected Al Gore as the winner, we ultimately had President George W. Bush. So this has happened more than once in our nation's history. And so what we can do to raise awareness, I appreciate you having me on to explain this and acknowledge all of this, but to continue to push back, and especially against big tech that continues to flag the president's tweets and to flag all of the members of the legal team by saying, this is disputed, yet they won't flag any of Joe Biden and his so-called transition team when he's not actually president-elect. No state has certified. And so that is a conclusion and a rush to judgment. And you better bet that's disputed. But big tech is in on it, mainstream media is in on it, and Joe Biden is just trying to fly under the radar. And they want to have a rush to judgment and say, trust us, but don't verify. And by the way, we're the ones who also, the mainstream media, who pushed the Russia collusion hoax for 3.5 years, they pushed the impeachment hoax, and they wanted this investigation for 3.5 years. They won't give our legal team even 3.5 weeks to bring forward our legal challenges and lawsuits. What is the rush?
Lauren.
Jenna, nearly half of Americans believe that elections are unfair or rigged in some ways, studies have shown. In fact, NPR did a study showing that vastly more Democrats believe elections are unfair. When Republicans were polled, it was around 9% of Republicans and 48% of Democrats who felt there was some sort of rigging going on. Where are the Democrat voices? Are there any on the left that are saying, for the sake of our republic, we should look into this?
Yeah, no. And, Joe Biden, as the leader of their party, is refusing to acknowledge that every legal vote should count. In fact, he keeps saying we're going to keep counting the votes until basically he wins. And he keeps saying that all votes should count, which is an open invitation and opportunity to say that even the non-residents, the dead people, all of these irregularities should count. And so as the leader of his party, he needs to call for unity in that way. But the only thing that the Democrats are good at is having double standards. If they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. And so their hypocrisy here is that they are calling now for nationwide unity in that they want to shut up and silence the Republicans and President Trump, who is calling for election integrity, and say, you know what, even though we are the party who have been bailing out and condoning all of the rioting, looting, the arson, all of the unlawfulness, and all of the outright criminality over the last 8 months, we're now going to say it's your problem. Just shut up and bring unity here only because we want to be in charge. That's not how America works. And that's certainly not what President Trump is willing to do, because national unity is around the rule of law, not just simply a self-declared ruler.
Jenna Ellis, always so great to have you on Outsiders. Thanks so much for coming on this morning, and good luck in your quest. Many outsiders are there behind you, hoping that it all works out. Thanks for coming on.
Go, Jenna.
Thanks so much. I'll let the president know. Thank you.
Thank you.